Helldivers, I have been cooking. And yes, I'm getting this video out pretty early on the Warbond because somebody kept me up all night. I'm going to be going over the primary weapons that we get in the Warbond, and I gotta say, thankfully, all the weapons are pretty good. But that does leave more questions on, do the developers know what they're doing? Because this could be like a lack of foresight or something more questionable. And you'll see what I mean when we start, going over the weapons. But real quick, is this Warbond worth it? If you like fire stuff, yes. Fire damage did not get changed, fire damage itself. So all these weapons are pretty damn good, actually. This might be the first complete Warbond where like nothing comes out like bad or needing balance. So thumbs up in that regard. Now let's jump to the first weapon, and we're gonna go with the fire shotgun, the pump shotgun, and it's called the Cookout. So looking at the Cookout's stats, we're gonna compare it to the Punisher because that's our other pump action. The Cookout does 320 damage while the Punisher does 405. Now everything else is basically the same. The Cookout actually has a little bit less recoil. Now the thing about the Cookout too is it does stagger. So now we have a pump shotgun that does pretty good base damage at 320. That is good. It staggers, so it pushes back, commanders, alpha commanders, anything that gets up close to you. And it applies fire damage, which we mentioned earlier. Fire damage wasn't touched in the patch, and fire damage is still very good. Now, did this just make all the other shotguns obsolete when it comes to the Terminids bugs? I'll let the community decide, because they did just nerf a certain shotgun because it was being used too much on high end. And I just wonder, what do they think is gonna happen with this one now? So that's some food for thought. We're not gonna dwell on this too much, but just keep that in the back of your mind. And then next up, we're gonna talk about the Torture, and we're gonna talk about the Crisper. Torture is the new primary flamethrower, and the Crisper is the sidearm flamethrower. We're gonna talk about these two in tandem because they're essentially the same, just with some minor differences. So if you look at their stats, they both do the same amount of damage. Now you see that the Crisper actually has a much lower canister capacity than the Torture, which makes sense. The Torture is the primary, the Crisper is the secondary, so that's to be expected. And so how good is the Torture? And when I talk about how good the Torture is, you can also talk about how good the Crisper is, because again, they do the same damage, just one has a bigger ammo capacity than the other one. And so thankfully the Torture, it does what it's supposed to do. I think as a flamethrower, it melts all the chaff enemies pretty quickly, similar to the Stratagem flamethrower. And I actually compared it to, I did a little testing between the two. Basically, they just replaced the Stratagem flamethrower with this. So basically, they just brought down the Stratagem flamethrower to the Torture's level. So basically, they kind of made the Stratagem flamethrower redundant because now you can have a primary flamethrower that essentially does the same thing. The Stratagem flamethrower has more in the tank, but it only has 4 tanks you can hold. Okay, the Torture has 6 canisters it holds. And so the rub about this is the fact that now that Stratagem weapon slot for the flamethrower is it looks bad. It looks really bad because Stratagem weapon slots are way more valuable than a primary slot. In most cases when you're making a loadout. So as it stands right now, it kind of looks like they just ejected the incendiary breaker shotgun and they just ejected the Stratagem flamethrower, because this Torture flamethrower basically does the same thing. The biggest test for this was against the Charger. It basically takes a canister to melt the Charger's butt, and that's the same thing that the Stratagem flamethrower does. So when comparing the Torture and the Stratagem flamethrower against a Charger, the primary flamethrower, the Torture, melts a Charger's butt, Behemoth Charger by the way, in about 1 canister, and then you can just let it bleed out. The Stratagem flamethrower has a larger canister, so it doesn't take a full canister to melt the butt, but it's still doing the same damage. So there's, again, not a huge difference between the two. And I think that's pretty unfortunate, again, because Stratagem weapon slot versus a primary, that Stratagem weapon should just be so much better, right? So that's a little weird. And really quick about the Crisper, some other things about it. It is one-handed. You can run and gun with it. Canister is not very large though, but again, it does that same fire damage as both the other flamethrowers. So it's good in that regard. It's just, it's not gonna do a lot of heavy lifting. It's actually nice just to spray the ground and then beat it. And actually, this thing would have worked really well for my Mandalorian build, but you can't get rid of like the blaster pistol. So maybe like a Boba Fett variant. Anyways, Everything else with the Warbond, it's just, you know, skins, emotes, all that stuff. That's all fine. That's subjective. You know, you take it or leave it as far as the theme, and I like it. It's pretty cool. The booster, on the other hand, that one's pretty cool. I haven't unlocked it yet, but I saw it being used, and I didn't get footage of it, unfortunately. But somebody else had it, and it just basically, you land and it like explode with fire damage. That's going to be pretty cool when you want to like drop on a charger or like a Bile Titan, something like that. But if you're landing near your friends, you better watch out. And also the new armor we get comes with a fire resistance perk for 75%. It's actually really helpful if you are going to be bringing a bunch of fire stuff, because you do catch yourself on fire a lot. And if you're not quick to stim yourself, you will just get melted. But with this, it gives you actually a lot more time to stim yourself, where you could actually just slay down a firewall, walk through it, no problem, keep, you know, using your flamethrower, and you'll have plenty of time to stim yourself back up and not be killed. So armor is actually pretty nice. So yeah, overall thoughts about the Warbond. I do think it's worth it. It came out pretty well. It's just, given what happened in the patch and how they nerfed, you know, the other two fire weapons, they now just kind of like replace those with the weapons that are in the Warbond. And so when they give reasoning for, you know, nerfing the breaker incendiary for, you know, it's being used 30% of the time against the bugs, what do they think is going to happen now with the cookout, when, again, it does all those things where it has really nice base damage, it staggers, and then it also has that fire that it applies. So a little questionable by the devs on that one, but at least we have a Warbond that's viable and nothing came out shit. So that's a positive. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. This is going to be my last video of the week until next week, where I'm going to have a build video, and then I will be gone for a week, and then hopefully by then there's going to be some patches, and they're going to iron out some of the, you know, tension we have with the community right now. Oh, and did you guys see the CEO came into Discord, and that's a brave man. And I started laughing when one of his questions that he asked the Discord was, "Are you guys having fun with the patch?" Dude. Oh my god. Yeah, it just seems like it's weird with these live services. It's like we have so many of them, and it really does feel like development teams don't look across the pond to see what other development teams are doing, or like what not to do in some cases. And it's just kind of like, you guys almost need like, they almost need like a community council that they go to and kind of ask questions before they do things. I don't know. It's just a lot of this could have been avoided. And I know, you know, some people are fine with what happened with the patch, and some people, majority are not. But a lot of this could have been avoided, and the explanations given are just kind of... Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.